Any other discussion? Please call the question.
Andre?
Nay.
Cowdery?
Nay.
Gibbs?
Nay.
Kring?
Nay.
Quinn?
Nay.
Shepherd?
Aye.
Vandenberg?
Nay.
Item number 8. Madam Mayor, I move the City Council approve the added concrete colored intersection at Lamar at a cost of $60,000 as described in Section 4 of the proposed resolution and its addendum.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, now this is what they showed on the model so that it would end cap what is at Knoll and Johnson Drive, so it would signify when you're entering that downtown district. Now, is there any discussion on this item?
It looks like brick. It's not brick, is it?
No, it's
just
concrete. It's a pressed stamped concrete. And one of the reasons they want to do the concrete is because the intersections hold up better with concrete. Okay, call the question.
Andre?
Nay.
Cowdery?
Nay.
Gibbs?
Aye.
Kring?
Aye.
Quinn?
Nay.
Shepherd?
Aye.
Vandenberg?
Nay.
Item number 9. Madam Mayor, I move the City Council approve the added concrete colored intersection at Woodson at a cost of $55,000 as described in Section 4 of the proposed resolution and its addendum.
Okay, now this item, just for those who were not at the meeting, one of the things that they wanted to do is sort of highlight that Woodson intersection so that it would be different given the issues with the removal of the traffic light. So this was looked at not only as an amenity, but also as something that would be a protection for pedestrians. Is there any discussion on this item?
We don't have a second, I don't believe.
Oh, is there a second?
Second.
I seconded it.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this item? Did you want to have discussion, Mr. Andre, or were you just sharing?
I was waiting for the second. So.
All right. Please call the question.
Andre?
Nay.
Cowdery?
Nay.
Gibbs?
Aye.
Kring?
Nay.
Quinn?
Nay.
Shepherd?
Aye.
Vandenberg?
Nay.
Okay, so I am to item number 10. Madam Mayor, I move the City Council approve a resolution establishing the Johnson Drive design concept for improvements between Knoll Avenue and just west of Lamar Avenue that includes all the components approved by City Council at tonight's meeting. Of those components, I have 2. $140,000 for the upgraded lighting and the $85,000 for the planters. Am I correct? Okay.
Planners now? Seat walls. Yeah.
The seat walls.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I made the motion.
Second.
Sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Mrs. Gibbs.
That's Mrs. Cream. but
I mean,
that's
I'm
okay.
sorry. Ms. Craig.
We're just the same. We're interchangeable.
It's a long
I need clarity on the interceptor and the vote because I think it's really confusing.
Well,
The interceptor's not part of it.
the interceptor's not part of it, and I was gonna just, before you get to the resolution, understand that all the plans that we presented, those options that we did in March, all that basically
It's gone.
is gone. And we will start back with a new set of preliminary engineering studies, because the preliminary engineering study that we did to basically continue the Rock Creek and the floodplain remediation was the best option of the 5 that we explored and have to submit to SMAC was the interceptor option on Johnson Drive. So as it relates to any future stormwater work, we're starting over. It's basically, you're at day 1, and the soonest that you will get to any other stormwater, I'll tell you, is we'll have to finish this study with Fairway, and let's say we were able to do that in 18 months, and then we'll have to come back with some idea as to what you want to do with the downtown corridor. If you want to come back and remove it, since this is a CARS project, if it then, let's say you came back and you wanted to remove it and somehow that became the project, I couldn't get new CARS money, nor would SMAC repay the city for any street repair caused by putting back the interceptor. So you have to kind of know that that's gone and we start over.
I mean, it almost doesn't make sense to do the street work if we're not going to do the stormwater
Madam
work.
Mayor.
Mr. Andre?
I think the stormwater work is critical to the city. I've said this before at previous meetings. There's no reason for me to repeat those comments here tonight. Without the stormwater work, we're still looking at spending nearly $7 million by my estimation on downtown Mission, as the mayor just said. It's really questionable to a lot of folks to spend $7 million and not fix the stormwater. I cannot support a Johnson Drive project that does not address the stormwater. I would like to move that we amend the motion on the floor to put language that is in Section 3 as currently presented before us into the motion that Ms. Gibbs made. So I make a motion to amend Ms. Gibbs to put Section 3, which is the interceptor and the it's number 2 on what was in here. It's Section 3 in the resolution that's in front of us, the resolution that we've been looking at all month long. So I move that we amend the motion on the floor to put Section 3 of the
Vote on
resolution.
the interceptor again, then.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, that's what I'm moving, but I'm to put it back into the amendment, or the motion.
I think that only, as a point of order, I think only a person who voted with the majority on that motion can make the motion.
I'm not,
So did you vote no or yes?
He voted
yes.
yes. The no votes were Cowdery, Kring, Quinn, and Vandenberg. If one of those 4 want to bring it up for,
If one of those 4 want to bring that up to put it in, then we can have a second. and
So
we
I
can vote on
can't
it.
move to amend a motion on the floor? This motion has not been made.
this was one of the risks that Susie and I talked about. And sort of what I arrived at is we had these 9 motions. If there was somebody that was in the minority, it would take someone in the majority of one of those that was voted down, or up, however you want to view it, to bring it back up within the body of the resolution at the end.
I understand the procedure on that. If we wanted to bring a motion back up, I guess the question here is, am I bringing a motion back up that was previously made, or am I making a new motion to amend a motion on the floor? And I guess
Amendment language.
that we put Section 3 back in.
We've got 2,
That's fine. If
that means one of you guys could make, you, or Mr. Vandenberg could make that motion to modify.
I'd like to modify the motion and amend it back to my first amendment, which,
You
why,
can't.
I'm in the minority.
Not on
in
that
terms
one,
of-
you weren't.
Well, no, okay. Just procedurally, you can't do that whole jump at one time.
Okay,
So you can make the motion
for reconsideration.
to put, you can make the motion for the reconsideration on this. Someone who voted with the majority on that $5 removal could also make a motion to amend. It's the way the rules work. I didn't make them up. So, are you wanting to go ahead and make your motion?
No, I'm in the majority on my amendment, and that's the amendment I want to stick with, so if it has to be somebody on the people that voted for the $5
Only,
need to bring it up.
no, only you can bring, only one of you that voted on the interceptor can bring the interceptor back up again.
But I can, what is it, Madam
But he
Mayor?
could bring up taking out the $5.
But Mrs. Kring lost, she was on the no vote of her amendment. Or she lost, she was on the losing side of that, so she could bring that back up.
No.
She was on the winning side of the interceptor vote.
She was on,
She was on the vote no.
she voted no on the interceptor with $5. She was on the losing side of removing the $5. So she can bring the interceptor up, but she can't bring up the removal of the $5 ERU.
Mr. Shepherd?
Madam Mayor, I would like to make a, and listen, folks, if you think this is easy all the time, it's not, and this is what committee meetings oftentimes look like, and the political process isn't always for the faint of heart. So sometimes it's a little bit like watching sausage be made, so it is what it is. So I'd like to make an amendment that I was on the prevailing side that voted in favor of the $5 ERU stormwater utility fee being implemented with the 2013 budget year. I would like to amend the motion on the floor to remove that $5 ERU stormwater utility fee for budget year 2013 with the, and I think that's all I have to say. I don't think I have to say anything about deferring it to 14.
I'm going to remove it.
Just remove it. Correct.
All
Second.
right.
Second. Can I
Okay.
second?
You can second. Anybody can second it.
They're starting. Just as a question, I'm sorry, Mayor, I'm confused. Well, I thought Dave and I voted the same on that. So how can you make a motion on this, but I can't?
Make a motion for the $5.
For the $5.
All he's making the motion is to take the $5 out of the interceptor.
So basically, he's making the motion that
Debbie made.
Ms. Kring tried to amend.
Right.
We're back to Mrs. Kring's motion. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to remove the $5 ERU, a month ERU, from the interceptor.
Correct. So
Unbundle that.
we're getting ready to vote to approve the interceptor and the design, but not fund it with the
Now we're
ERU.
getting ready to say, to take the $5 out on that interceptor.
But we're,
So you want me to,
Go with the interceptor. That's right. Right.
It's just,
So that's why I said, I think Debbie needs, if you want to talk about it again, you have to bring up the whole thing, and then he can go ahead and bring up an amendment to it. You have to bring up to remove, somebody in the prevailing on the interceptor vote has to bring it up to discuss it, and then he can go ahead and bring up an amendment.
Okay. So I can go ahead and reiterate the initial language, so it's on the record that I'm saying that I'm making this motion with the $5 in it, but then we won't, he'll make a second amendment that changes it.
right.
Right,
that for clarity.
provided there's a second. Right,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I move the City Council approve the Johnson Drive Interceptor as described in Section 3 of the proposed resolution at an estimated additional cost of $2.3 million to be funded by an additional $5 a month ERU stormwater utility fee for a 5-year period starting in the 2013 budget year.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Shepherd.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to amend the amendment to remove the $5 ERU increase for budget year 2013.
Is there a
Second.
All right.
So
Okay, so now what happens is we vote on...
We have a discussion.
We're going to have a discussion, but then when you vote, the vote's going to be on taking the $5 out, uncoupling it with the interceptor on the area. Okay, now there's discussion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Cowdery?
are we just taking the same vote we just took again? Where we voted on the $5 ERU and then we voted on the interceptor? And now we're voting on the $5 ERU removal and we're voting on the interceptor?
Yes, it was brought up by
So
people
we're
in the
just doing,
prevailing.
so we're just doing it twice?
No.
No,
No,
the interceptor failed.
We're doing it
The
again.
interceptor
Yeah, but
failed.
are we
So
going to
someone
try to
brought
vote
it
on
up.
it again? Is that what you want to do?
Without the $5.
We haven't gotten there yet.
Yes.
Well, the first
There's
is
two
we're
amendments
voting
on the
on an amendment to remove
back
the
to where we
$5 increase.
We did that already, right?
We did that already. And so, but the person in the prevailing party has brought up that they want to revisit that.
Okay,
they
so we're
can
going
do
to
that.
vote on it twice, okay.
That's pretty much it.
Okay,
There you go.
Madam
thank
Mayor.
you.
Yes.
And the
Mr.
reason
Shepherd.
why we are voting on the amendment and the amendment to the amendment is what Mr. Andre said, which is, how in the world can you spend $7 million on Johnson Drive in downtown Mission and not address stormwater at the same time? You have to do both together, and as much as I say if you're going to do it, you got to make the tough decision to tell folks how you're going to pay for it. I'm willing to defer it to 2014 so we do downtown Mission the right way. For God's sakes, we do the west end and the east end. I mean, we have spent all kinds of money fixing our infrastructure on those two ends of town, but yet we continue to ignore downtown Mission, and this is the opportunity as a council to demonstrate that we are going to make the right investment, and so that's why we're discussing this again.
Just as a correction out of what you
Mr.
said,
Quinn?
you certainly could do all the repairs without doing the interceptor. You can't say that you cannot do that without doing the interceptor, because you could do it without including the interceptor, just as a clarification.
No, you could, Pat. Yes, you could.
It is just,
But with the caveat of,
Understand-
what Mr. Scanlon said too, to at what cost, because if you look at all of the preliminary,
I got your point,
Design.
I just wanted to clarify.
no, okay.
the
Then-
recommendation
is that
of our engineers and what council's worked through, that it's the best cost solution for the community. Okay, any other discussion?
Well,
Mr. Vandenberg?
just to reiterate my points that I made before, I've looked at what the improvements would be without the interceptor. There are stormwater improvements that would be made along Johnson Drive, and I think, in my opinion, those improvements, with the decreased amount of time that it's going to take in order to do the project with the removal of the interceptor, removing the interceptor from the project eliminates the fact that we would be spending an additional $2.3 million, which would be put onto the backs of the residents of Mission at some point in time. Might not be this year, but at some point, somebody's going to have to pay for it. So I'm just completely against the interceptor. That's just my opinion, so.
Okay, all right, Mrs. Gibbs?
I don't know how many of you saw the letter that Sharon Miller from Art Glass Production sent to people. She has a business down on Mission by Firewalk on Johnson Drive, and she wrote this long letter. She asked me to read the letter. I will not do the whole letter, but if any of you are interested in looking at it, please come up here and you're welcome to read it. But part of it says, whether we're renters or property owners, businesses or residents, the expense to correctly make the improvements and do them completely all at one time is minimal compared to doing nothing. She said 10 years from now to go back and dig everything up, who knows what stormwater regulations will be like. It will undoubtedly cost much more, and nothing will get accomplished, and Mission will still have bad roads, water problems, and street issues. She says it's important to the future of Mission to preserve, improve, and maintain downtown business. And her last paragraph says, I'm proud to tell people my business is in Mission. My customers like the closeness of the highway connection. I like knowing my neighborhood businesses. It's exciting to see changes that make a city become a place where people want to be. And it's refreshing to be in a city willing to endure the painstaking measures necessary to fix issues that have been overlooked for far too long.
Okay, yes, Mr. Andre?
I'd like to say I've been around long enough to see it all, but I'm clearly not there yet. I'm almost speechless here at what I think we're about ready to pass and vote. The words that resonate so loudly in my head right now, and it's always dangerous to have a conversation with yourself, is Mike Scanlon's advice to us over the years on countless times: you never issue debt until you know how you're going to pay for it. And to the credit of this council over the years, as much flack as they have taken and we have taken, I don't remember an instance, at least since 2005 and most likely during this administration, where we have ever issued debt without knowing how we're going to pay for it. Now, technically, the amendments on the floor are not issuing debt. I get that. But financial experts will also tell you, when you're outside of government spending decisions, when you talk about personal finance, that you don't go buy something that you don't have money to pay for. You don't go buy on credit card. And this city, during the recent election cycle, has taken a lot of flack for being accused of spending on credit cards. I disagree with those opinions, but I understand folks who feel that way. In my opinion, if we go forward with this option, we're spending on credit card because we have no idea how we're going to pay for this project. We're trusting that the council next year will figure it out. That's silly. I cannot support that. So for what it's worth, no.
And Laura, I would like to ask Mike,
That's good.
your opinion of doing this. Well, I know what you're going to say, but I think we all need to hear it.
Councilman Andre is correct. Anytime that we've entered into a project or a set of projects, we've always done our best to identify those resources that we will use to pay for it. As relates to this vote, as relates to the $5 ERU, I think you have to be fully aware that if you don't vote for it now, that you could very well be having to vote for that $5 ERU in a year. And I don't think I've hidden that from anybody. I've told them, you know, the Gateway project is proceeding. It looks like it could get to fruition, and there could be revenues that could be used to help offset some of this expense. But if that doesn't happen, you have to be ready to meet the obligation, because once you put the interceptor in there and it's designed, that's what we're building.
Thank you.
So the amendment on the floor right now is whether to remove the $5 ERU from, as the identified funding source for the interceptor
The year 2013.
for the year 2013.
One more comment or question.
Yes, Mrs.
If this motion fails, what happens to the interceptor?
It's gone.
You mean
We'll
if we
see.
do again and that we vote and the interceptor fails? I mean, it's back to square one. So, I mean, I suppose then in that conversation you're having with yourself, Mr. Andre, it's a competing principle.
You rarely win when you converse with yourself. So I'm not going to do it. I know how I'm going to vote, and we'll move on. I'm ready for the vote.
But you are as everyone else. All right, so
Do you want to repeat the motion?
Yeah, so the first thing that's going to be voted on is to remove the $5 ERU increase to the stormwater utility fee for 2013.
And then the second thing?
Well,
We're
let's
gonna
one
take
at
it
a
one
time.
at a time.
Yay vote is to remove the 5.
If you vote
Yes.
yes, you take out the $5. Okay, so if you vote yes, you take out the $5. If you vote no, you leave the $5.
Well done.
Okay, yes takes out the $5. Please call the question.
Andre,
No.
Cowdery,
Yay. Yay, I'm sorry.
Gibbs,
Yes. Yay.
Crane,
Aye.
Quinn,
Yay.
Aye, sorry.
Shepherd,
Aye.
Vandenberg,
Yay.
All right, so now we have the vote on the interceptor, and that is the interceptor that is described in section 3 of the resolution.
With unidentified funding sources to pay for it.
That has the $5 ERU removed.
So there are no identified funding
For
sources for this
2013.
project. For 2013, thank you.
That's correct.
Or beyond. We have not approved funding sources
Well,
beyond.
that's because you don't bind future councils, Mr. Andre, as you know.
I agree.
Each year, council addresses funding sources and expenses for each budget process, as we've done
Yep.
the years you've been on council and witnessed
Yep.
it when you're on planning commission.
Absolutely.
All right,
So the motion is?
so the motion is to approve the Johnson Drive interceptor as described in section 3 of the proposed resolution at an estimated additional cost of $2.3 million, period. An aye vote supports the interceptor. A no vote says we're not going to do the interceptor. Okay. So this is without any additional ERU increase. Are we good? We going to call the question? All right. Mrs. Summerall, please call the
Andre.
question.
No.
Cowdery,
No.
Gibbs,
No.
Wait a minute.
You don't want the interceptor?
This is the interceptor without the
We are
$5.
I thought you were talking about we're taking up, okay.
We're voting on the interceptor that doesn't have $5 in it.
Okay, all right, I'm
We just
sorry.
did.
Are you a nay?
Yeah, I know, I'm a yay. Yes.
Are you a nay?
Aye.
You're a nay, you're against the
I'm
interceptor?
aye.
Correct.
Even without the $5?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Kring,
Aye.
aye. Quinn,
Nay.
Shepherd,
Aye.
Vandenberg.
Nay.
Okay, fails.
Okay. All right. Well,
We still have a motion on the floor. All right. Yeah.
we have a motion on the floor for the resolution to
Build Johnson Drive without
the Johnson Drive along with what deck? Valid point. Mr. Andre?
I'm not prepared to make that motion based on what I know, but from what I think I just heard in that exchange is unless there's an increased cost element here, this council doesn't have to dictate that design element. The only reason these items are identified and itemized out individually is because these were considered additional cost items that we needed to have funding for. So given that I think that the concrete intersections could be potentially designed in as part of the baseline cost, I see no need to make that motion that Mr. Brown recommended, but I certainly would hope that staff and our engineering firms would look at his concerns.
Is there any other discussion on the motion that's on the floor? Mr. Andre?
So the motion we have before us basically is,
Tell you what, why don't I go back to Mrs. Gibbs if you're just going to restate what we're doing because
Well,
that's really her deal.
I'm not going to just restate, but I was going to also,
Clarify?
I was going to share my opinion
Okay.
once again on my vote here. Not that it should not be clear, it should be clear to everyone here, but in essence, the motion on the floor is to approve the Johnson Drive design contract minus the stormwater improvements that come with the interceptor. As I have said repeatedly, I cannot support spending $7 million or more on Johnson Drive and not fixing the stormwater, so I will not be supporting this resolution.
Any other discussion?
I have
Mr.
So,
Shepherd?
If I can, Mr. Scanlon, so where does this leave us after months of planning in terms of stormwater and the fixing of Johnson Drive? If this resolution without the interceptor fails, you said we go back to square one, but
Right.
help me understand what that means, what we put at risk, because
And the cost.
cost, I'm just trying to understand, because what I don't think there's any question about is that Johnson Drive is failing and needs to be repaired. I know that some feel that perhaps a mill and overlay might work, but my opinion is that's not to know the entire story of Johnson Drive. And I'm trying to understand where we're at.
When we started with Rock Creek improvements, and we started looking at the city's stormwater issues holistically, as we progressed from downstream, and we did sort of the first phase of PESs for Rock Creek to remove property from the floodplain, what we realized is we had this entire area, and I'm going to say roughly west of Whitson, that contributed a lot of water to Rock Creek and the flooding that we have basically around this area. As we were designing the stormwater improvements at the gateway, Charlie Sievert said we should look at that idea of intercepting water in the western part of the city of Mission as this long-term strategy as we manage stormwater into the future. So we basically took a concept that we learned from at the gateway and we applied it up here. We then put together what's called a preliminary engineering study for SMAC, and that's how you get started on getting stormwater projects approved. That PES looked at 5 options. The option that was deemed the best by SMAC standards was the interceptor under Johnson Drive. Understand that when we go back to SMAC, I'm going to go back and say, well, we know what the best option was, but we've taken that off the table, so now I have other options that now need to be considered. It will be more difficult, I think, simply because I'm not sure, when I say you start over, you're really starting over. Remember, we took that interceptor, and that sort of became our mantra in terms of what we're going to do with stormwater as we progressed, and as we even asked Black & Veatch and contracted with them to design out the secondary stormwater system. So that all contemplates there being an interceptor. With that gone, that work is basically, you throw it away, because you aren't going to be collecting it in an interceptor system, since there won't be an interceptor system under Johnson Drive, because that's what's contemplated. So you start over. You literally start over.
So, if I can, Mayor.
Absolutely.
So we start over with stormwater, but tell me, how do you fix Johnson Drive at the level we're talking about fixing Johnson Drive without having an overlay stormwater plan at the same time?
That from the very beginning, as we looked at stormwater and we understood the importance of Johnson Drive in conveying and being a part of that system, we always did and thought about Johnson Drive and its improvement in tandem with the overall stormwater project for the city of Mission. Tonight, we've separated it. We'll put in a secondary stormwater collection system, and it'll be under Johnson Drive, but as Charlie, I think, probably said it best, 1 box in Johnson Drive is worth 2 boxes in that creek. And so what you're going to do is you're going to start redesigning that creek, and you're going to take away really a lot more width if you're headed towards boxing.
It's 4 boxes under the creek, and doing this in interceptor was going to reduce that.
So now we're going to buy more property. We're going to widen the channel with boxes.
If you want to continue to do stormwater projects.
And these options, though, never take the property south of Johnson Drive ever out of the 100-year floodplain.
Not right away, because the idea was capturing the water that was in the west and getting it down here soon so that it wouldn't cause the flooding.
So you can't fix Johnson Drive the way this resolution contemplates it without having us plan for stormwater.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. But you've pretty much stopped, and I think Councilman Andre talked about this 2 months ago, you pretty much stop talking about stormwater once you decide to move away from this.
Can I ask a question? What happened to the vote that was taken where there were 2 people that voted against this? What happened to that vote? I'm talking about the motion that was on the table that Will and Lawrence voted against, which was accepting the interceptor with not $5 ERU attached to it. Then we voted again. I'm confused on why we keep voting.
But that was an amendment to an amendment, and the first amendment succeeded, but I'm sorry, Mayor.
The confusing part on my part, and after 12 years of being here, I guess I'm confused. The same people that voted for it just voted against it. It's confusing. I'm really disappointed. We thought this was a mechanism to get the interceptor through, which is needed commodity for stormwater conveyance, without having people pay additional taxes right now. We have revenue streams from both ends of the community coming forth in the next year to year and a half. I'm confident we're going to have extra money coming in. I feel good about that. We have to move forward. Disappointed.
Mr. Andre?
I'm kind of interested in getting to the vote here. In essence, what we have on the floor is a motion to spend nearly $7 million, or whatever the final number is, to fix Johnson Drive and to ignore the stormwater work. I think that's a mistake. If this motion does not pass, we're back at some point reconsidering the design contract at Johnson Drive, and that's where I hope this council gets to. So it would be my hope that this does not pass, we call the question, and we move on and we revisit this. Probably in a different meeting because of rules tonight.
No, doesn't help. Mrs. Gibbs?
Lawrence, and I guess my question to you is you are concerned about having the $5 ERU removed because you don't know where we're going to get that money.
I'm not going to vote to spend $2.3 million when I don't know how we're going to fund it.
Okay. Mike,
Period.
do you have any comments on that?
No.
Well, I think what Mike said is we're okay for 2013 to not have that revenue. The revenue's not needed until 2014, is what Mike said.
So, Madam Mayor, are we down to the point where we vote on this resolution for Johnson Drive with just the
Two elements.
5 point, yeah, so, yeah.
You got the lights.
$5.3 million,
You got the lights.
the
got the
$140,000, and the $85,000.
You got the decorative, or the seat walls, and you've got the decorative lighting, and then the base proposal for Johnson Drive.
Okay, is that,
That is what is before council.
Can I ask another question?
Mr. Shepherd?
Mr. Scanlon, one other question. If this resolution fails to repair Johnson Drive, fix Johnson Drive, how much CARS money or other outside funding is in jeopardy of us losing?
The money that's most at risk first is the surface transportation money, 2.8 million federal dollars that's administered by KDOT. And it becomes at risk because we're not given enough time to get the plans completed and submitted to KDOT to meet the September 2013 bid date, and understand that it's simply not getting the plans approved by KDOT that is a trigger in all of this. It's also obtaining all the right-of-way and easements. And Justin, how many easements are required? Or Martin?
50 or 60.
So we have 50 or 60 easements that we also have to acquire in addition to getting the plans approved. The more you delay it, the longer it takes for the engineers to draw the plans, the longer it takes to know what we need to get in terms of property and easements. And then all of a sudden we're at, you're trying to rush an easement acquisition process that the federal government tells us we have to follow, which has some really strict guidelines. So you're risking 2.8 million.
Bigger problem to me is, one of the reasons we've been having redevelopment in our community and people coming to invest their hard-earned dollars in our community is because we have been improving the infrastructure and taking care of our infrastructure and putting our money where our mouth is. I don't see people interested in making improvements to their property or wanting to purchase property in Mission if they're going to see that we are not going to make those improvements that have been needed to be made in Mission for a very long time. And that does cause me grave concerns. That causes me a lot of concerns. And Mr. Andre, I understand the funding source, but I look at your vote as cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Madam Mayor, whatever, that's crap. Could I make,
Would you like to make a comment?
what are the rules in terms of making an amendment? As you said, I could not make an amendment to this in the exact wordage of what was made earlier this evening by Mrs. Gibbs. How much deviation, well, I still don't think I can make that amendment. Is that correct?
What is it that you want to do? Look at me, ask me, what is it that you want to do?
The amendment, or the motion that Mrs. Gibbs made, the second motion she made this evening, which failed.
That's correct.
Earlier this evening, I tried to, I guess, make that same motion in the eyes of our staff, and so I was told I could not do that because I was not on the right side of the original vote. So I'm assuming that still stands now.
That's correct.
So how much of that original motion would have to change to technically be a new motion and not the same motion?
Well, I'm not sure what you're asking, but on the last motion that council voted on, had to do with voting on the interceptor period without the 5 ERU. You were on the prevailing side of that motion with your no vote.
Okay.
Therefore, if you would want to revisit that issue, you would be able to ask to revisit that issue because you were in the prevailing side of that motion.
I do not want to approve $2.3 million without identified funding sources, so I will not be doing that.
Okay?
But I would be certainly interested in making a motion to amend that somehow, for instance, it's a $5 ERU in there. If it was to say $4 or $6, is that fundamentally different?